Mark Zuckerberg and Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss versus the legal contract. Mark is being accused of forming a valid contract with Tyler Winklevoss and Cameron Winklevoss, and furthermore, breaking the contract. Today, I'm here to prove that there were evidences that showed they had entered into an official contract. First of all, allow me to introduce what a contract is and how you can legally enter into one. According to law, a contract is a legally binding agreement formed among two or more parties. There are three elements that are necessary for all legal contracts to be formed. 1. An offer, a proposal of the terms of an agreement. 2. An acceptance, the offeree's assent to the terms of the offer. And 3. A consideration, what one party to a contract would get from the other party in return for performing the contract obligations. If the contract misses even one of these components, it is said to be unenforceable. In today's case, Tyler Winklevoss and Cameron Winklevoss are accusing Mr. Zuckerberg of forming a valid contract with them, claiming that Mark had agreed upon their meeting that he would work as partners with them on an online website called the Harvard Connection. Clearly, Mr. Zuckerberg had entered into a legally accepted contract and had the full responsibility to execute his duties. Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss had been working on building up their idea of creating a social network, the Harvard Connection, since 2002, and were looking for somebody who could develop the program for the site. There, they met Mark Zuckerberg and set up a meeting with him to offer him the job to develop the website. In their meeting, they had entered into a legal contract with reasonable offers, acceptances, and considerations. The offer from the Winklevoss twins were very simple. They offered Mr. Zuckerberg to work on the coding and the development of the website. In Chapter 10, page 74, they marked that they'd be partners in the project, so if it made any money, they'd all do well. Mr. Zuckerberg's acceptance is not immediately noticeable, but there were no papers for him to sign or no verbal agreements. Usually, people would expect an acceptance to be marked by formal action, such as signing a document, but it does not need to be. There are 2 times where we can observe Mark's acceptance to the proposal. First, right after the 2 parties had their discussion about the Harvard Connection, Mr. Zuckerberg exchanges handshakes with the Winklevoss brothers. Shaking hands can be considered as an action of formal acceptance. In addition, in the book it mentions, by the time the meeting was over, Tyler knew that the kid was hooked. When they shook hands again, it was less fish and more like an engineer. This quote showed that he was ready and motivated to start working on the project. The second evidence of his acceptance can be found through Mr. Zuckerberg's actions after the meeting. After a few days from the meeting, Mr. Zuckerberg starts to send progress reports to the Winklevoss brothers about his development on the program. Mr. Zuckerberg constantly keeps on telling them that their partnership in the Harvard Connection was going great. He regularly sends emails to the Winklevoss brothers that are clearly indicating how he is putting effort into the program with the new website. These progress reports shows how he has the will to do the job, and according to common law, this type of acceptance expressed by actions are officially called acceptance by conduct. Lastly, if we look back at the meeting, we can find the consideration stated by Tyler Winklevoss. He mentions that if the project goes well, they would all make money and they'd all do well, which means that he is considering to share some profit with Mark Zuckerberg. He also suggested that Mr. Zuckerberg could handle and use the site however he wanted so that he could get the attention to raise his social status. This meant that the Winklevoss twins were willing to sacrifice their popularity that would result from creating this website and allow Mr. Zuckerberg to take much of the credit for it. Therefore, both Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss were willing to give up much of the credit and popularity they would have achieved by establishing the website, and were hoping for Mr. Zuckerberg to create the program for them in return. So, the question here is, did Mark Zuckerberg and the Winklevoss twins ever enter a formal agreement for a contract? And the answer is clearly a yes. The offers, acceptances and the considerations, all the elements necessary for a contract to be enforceable were presented clearly, and there is no doubt that Mark had agreed to form the contract with the Winklevoss twins. Thank you.
In this case, there was no legal contract formed between Mark Zuckerberg and the Winklevoss twins. A legal contract is an official agreement between two or more people stating what each will do. This must be consisted of offer, acceptance, and consideration. In this case, there was a clear offer that from Winklevoss that they needed Mark Zuckerberg's help to finish the program that they were working on for the past 2 years, which is the Harvard connection. However, there was no acceptance and consideration to this contract. It is true that Mark Zuckerberg had sent an email saying that he wanted to meet the Winklevoss twins to discuss about Harvard connection and that he was definitely interested in hearing about it. Also, he was sending some emails to the Winklevoss twins that he was working on coding for the Harvard connection. However, these cannot be proved as the evidence of the contract being formed, because Mark Zuckerberg said that he will try to work on it, but never said that he will finish the coding for Harvard connection. Therefore, there are no acceptance to this contract. In addition, there was no consideration to this contract. Consideration must be clear how it will benefit a person for doing something. However, in this case, consideration was not made clear by Mark Zuckerberg. It was too vague, and they only said that they will all going to make money in page 74, line 13, and never stated about the percentage of share. The Winklevoss twins also mentioned that working for Harvard connection will bring Mark Zuckerberg back into the company. This cannot be considered as consideration because it is not certain how much the profit he will get and how it will restore his reputation. Also, it is difficult to prove without a legal document. Since there are no acceptance and consideration, it can be said that there was no legal contract formed between Mark Zuckerberg and the Winklevoss twins.
Nothing more? Nope.